a moratorium on getting into additional debt or borrowing any more money. Now, this sounds like a no-brainer, but one has to recognize their own actions and behaviors that lead them into doing things and purchases that keep them in debt, then take action to stop those behaviors and spendings. Elder Preddy just alluded to that. So if you know that every time you go into Costco's, you come out spending $375 after you only went in there to buy a little pack of cucumbers, then guess what? Stop going into Costco's. That's your shopping demon, determined to get into any other debt by changing your thoughts and your behaviors and your actions. Step 2, make a covenant with God from this moment, one, you will pay off all of your debt. Make that a covenant between you and God to do this. Again, this sounds so simple, but stop running away from your debtors. Simply form a plan, form a doable plan, and pay off each debtor, even if you have to do it one debt at a time. But face what you have done and meet it head on with consistency and faithfulness. Step 3, make your plan to get out of debt doable and practical. Do your basic math on how much you have, how much you owe, and how much money is needed to pay off each bill, and identify what self-sacrifice you will sacrifice to make it happen. This might result in you rejoining us here for in-person worship because you have to cut off your cable or your in-streaming or cut down your cell phone down to just the basics in order for you to save those extra dollars in helping to pay off your debt. Yes, your financial sacrifices need to be strong enough to be able to cut your spending of all the fluff and unnecessary things that are in your tally. This will free you in a surprising amount of money to place on your next highest debt that you now owe. You know, one of our online viewers brings out the next biblical advice on dealing with debt. They shared that the Bible discourages us from co-signing another person to take out a loan from a bank or lending institution. He cited Proverbs 6, 1-5, and they quoted 1 Timothy 6 about the get-rich schemes as well as a trap. So Elder Preddy, how about you take on the first part of this and tell us why is one trapped if one enters agreement to co-sign with someone else, and what would you suggest otherwise in helping someone who's truly in need?
I think this is an interesting topic, and it's interesting that the Bible would even touch on this. I was always surprised that the Bible would have any comment about co-signing, but to me, co-signing is like serving another person's prison sentence. Like, you wouldn't choose to do that typically, right? So co-signing, unfortunately, puts you in a position to allow someone else's poor decision-making to impact you. You know, it's funny, I take care of a lot of patients who have health issues because of their poor decision-making. And someone asked me, well, how does that feel to have to do that? And I said, well, you know, as long as their decisions don't affect my health, you know, I'm okay with it. Not to be flippant, but the point is that, you know, you can work with someone who's made poor decisions and help them as best you can, but to allow yourself to be the recipient of their punishment for their poor decision making is really unwise. The Bible does call us to help those who are in need. If we come upon our brother and we recognize what his need is, and we have an opportunity to help or have the capacity to help, we are called to do so. That said, we are not going to, once again, put ourselves in a position to co-sign or to adopt the penalty for their poor decision-making going forward. Because if in the future they decide, you know what, I don't want to pay this bill, or I don't feel up to it, oh my goodness, I have a headache, I can't do it, I can't go to work, then now you're on the hook. And I think the statistic that was said, I'm not sure if it was in the lesson or if it was in one of the other side readings, that 75% of those who co-sign end up actually making payments on what they've co-signed. Right. Which means more likely than not, you're going to be on the hook. So I think the Bible is correct in letting us know that that's unwise.
Okay, Elder Stewart, Proverbs 28:20, as the lesson point out says, a faithful person will be richly blessed, but one eager to get rich will not go unpunished. But let me also read verse 22, which says, the stingy are eager to get rich and are unaware that poverty awaits them. So tell us, what do these verses have to do with warning against get-rich schemes?
First of all, there is a saying that says that if something is too good to be true,
it just might be.
It just might be too good to be true. And unfortunately, I must say that, I have been caught in that once or so before, where you see something and you go for it, and all of a sudden you find out that this is all fraud or something. And so that's why get rich schemes, right, always will bring trouble. Maybe not to you right off, but it will bring trouble to whoever your associate. There were through the years people have tried to entice me to go into these pyramid scheme things. And if you make a mistake once and you've been burnt, you learned your lesson, right? So that's why I said what I said, right? So what happens is that the Lord tells us that's trouble from the very beginning. He in His Word, He tells us that is trouble. At least in Proverbs, it tells us that. And so don't fall for that thing that looks like this is a great deal. This is something that I'm going to benefit from, because more than likely, as Elder Preddy stated, it's going to be what's not right.
And I rebuke the phrase, you got to be in it to win it. I rebuke the phrase, you got to be in it to win it. So we're just going to rebuke that phrase, okay?
Yes.
All right, once again, ladies and gentlemen, we need to move on. And now we're going to do our rapid fire questions. Here we ask the panelists and everyone joining us here at the Sabbath School and our invisible table to true or false questions, okay? Mm-hmm. So, Elder Stewart, true or false? The Bible is clear that God does not want us in debt, and borrowing money is a sin. True or false?
False.
False. Okay. Elder Preddy, there is such a thing as good debt. True. True. There are some financial, personal debts that can never be eliminated.
False.
False. The love of the world can be so strong that people will get into debt in order to satisfy that love. True. God has kept His counsel for dealing with debt only for those who are obedient to Him.
False.
False. Elder Preddy, a parent should not co-sign a loan even for their own child if they need a car. True. Congregation and those online, here's your question. It's okay to invest in get-rich investments as long as you don't go into debt doing it. True or false? Oh, so now we're at a quandary, true or false. We aren't getting anything from our audience, so I'll flip it to you, Elder Stewart. It's okay to invest in get-rich investments as long as you don't go into debt doing it.
True.
True. Okay. All right. We are running out of time, but is there any one question that you feel we must go back and review?
I would like to review the ones on the. I would like to review everyone that was asked of me. Well, not review, but I would like to. I would like to make a comment on.
Pick one. Was it the first one?
Let's go with the first one.
Okay, that was a real zinger.
And because
The
I know
Bible-
how you ask questions. I
That's
had to-
right. Because they have a message. Okay, the Bible is clear that God does not want us in debt, and borrowing money is a sin.
So it is true he does not want us to get in debt, right? But the other statement to that question is that borrowing money is a sin is not necessarily correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's why it makes that question
False.
false.
Okay, Elder Preddy, was there any one question?
Just the idea of co-signing for a family member, that's exactly who you shouldn't co-sign for. So I think our legacy that we can impart upon our children is good money management and patient and consistent work ethic to acquire the things that are necessary for us to have. Co-signing that loan doesn't teach that lesson and puts us at risk for what we know our children could put us into. So,
Absolutely. A wiser decision is if a child needs money for a loan to advance them whatever amount that you want to give
Absolutely,
them
sure.
and let them take that loan on themselves.
Absolutely.
Okay, Elder Stewart, can you share with us very quickly our term limits and borrowing points?
You know, one of the when I read this in the lesson, it talks about term limits and borrowing point. The Lord had a system to ensure that his people are never going to ever be in want, and for them to never ever be a slave to debt or to anyone. And so he created a system that says that every 7 years, that if I borrowed from you, that should be forgiven. You should be freed from it. And he also, in his word, when you read this, right, the first question that came to my mind as I was reading this is that, well, what happens if I come to you and ask you for money in the 6th year, and the 7th year is going to be, you're going to be debt free? What the Bible tells us is simply this. It tells us that we ought to still give to our brother because we really are our brother's keeper. Because God does not want any of us to be in it, but he also wants us to have a relationship with him and to have a love relationship. And so as a result of that, what I see here, that God does not want any of his children to be permanently in debt. And so therefore he has given us this example. And if we use this example, this 7-year limit example, we should not go into debt for indefinite periods of time, such as 30 years, 40 years. I know, forget it, with mortgages, you're probably going to be stuck doing something like that depending on the property that you're going to get. However, God does not want us to be in debt for the rest of our lives. And so therefore, he has created a system to make it so that we will not get in debt. And if we were to follow those principles and execute them as children of God, we would be debt-free.
Thank you. Elder Preddy, in our final moments, I'd like you to wrap up our thoughts and what are we to take away in looking at this lesson this week.
This is a powerful lesson. I think it teaches us a little bit about thrift. It teaches us about greed. It teaches us about the lust of the eyes. But really, I like what this lesson really encapsulated when it talked about how to get out of debt. I think this kind of financial literacy is something that can benefit the church not only locally here but globally. I like the points that were highlighted in the further thought section of Friday's lesson. Number one, be determined never to incur another debt. When you're trying to get out of debt, you can't dig a hole deeper than what you're already in. The first step is to just make that decision. It's a decision not to take on any other debt. And when you close the door on that, you have an